Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I am Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today on Gamemaker Tutorials, I'm going to be taking a look at tile collisions, which work pretty much the exact same as object collisions, which I've been using in all of my tutorials, and I'm sure you're rather familiar with them. You know, when I do like if, place, meeting, wall, but we're going to be changing that for a tile layer, where we're going to be creating a tile map, and we're going to be feeding that into our place meeting, and then using that to collide with tiles rather than objects. Tile collisions do have a lot of benefits, where like if you were using a tile set to build your game world, then you can very easily just use tile collisions and everything just lines up perfectly and it all looks great. Whereas if you're using tile sets and object collisions, then you are constantly dragging objects into the room editor and then resizing them and setting them to match with your tiles, when you could just very easily just use tiles for your collisions. So with that all said, I can run over what exactly I have going on for my starter project. So in my sprites, I just very simply just have fall, idle, jump, and walk. This is the same project I use for my broadcast messages, so I'll just delete these quick. Okay. And then finally I just have S wall, which is a single frame with a blue square. And then in my objects, I have two objects. I have O wall, which legitimately just has the same bounding box and sprite as S wall, and other than that, it has no code. I also have O player, and this is where all of my code for this project is. So here I'm declaring my variables for getting player input. I'm declaring my variables for my movement. I'm declaring my variables for calculating my movement, and then a boolean for whether or not I am currently on the ground. And then if I go to my step event, I'm getting my player input, and then I am declaring a local variable and then using that to determine whether or not I should be moving, and if I should be moving, in what direction. And then I am setting my horizontal speed by multiplying my walk speed by this variable, which will have me moving either not at all or in the respective direction. If I press the up key and I am currently standing on the ground, I am minusing jump height off of my vertical speed, and then I am adding gravity to my vertical speed every frame regardless. And then if place meeting x plus HSP, so I'm about to hit a wall, I set my horizontal speed to 0. And then if place meeting x and then y plus VSP O wall, which means I'm about to be colliding with the wall vertically, I set my vertical speed to 0. And then I set grounded to be true, because it means I'm on the ground currently. Otherwise, I'm setting grounded to be false. And then finally, I'm committing to my movement by adding my horizontal and vertical speed to my x and y coordinates. And then also I am animating, so if sine HSP does not equal 0, which means I am moving either left or right, I'm setting my image x scale to equal my sine HSP, which will flip my image left or right to match up with what direction I'm currently moving. If I am on the ground and my horizontal speed equals 0, which means I'm on the ground and I'm not moving, I'm setting my sprite index to be S player idle. Otherwise, if I'm on the ground and my HSP does not equal 0, which means I am moving, I'm setting my sprite index to equal S player walk. Otherwise, which means I am not on the ground, if my vertical speed is less than 0, which means that it is below 0, so it means it's negative, which means I am moving up on the y-axis, then I'm setting my sprite index to be S player jump. Otherwise, which means my vertical speed is greater than 0, which means that I am moving down on the y-axis, I'm setting my sprite index to be S player fall. And then if I run this project, as you can see, I'm able to move around and jump and basic platformer stuff. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be swapping out these walls that I'm colliding with, and I'm going to be replacing them with a tile system. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tile set. So I'm going to look at this and see it's 32 by 32, which means I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'm going to call it STS call. And the reason why I'm doing this is sprite tile set collision, and I'm going to have it set to 64 by 64, so that's perfect. I'm going to go edit image, and I'm going to toggle the grid, and I'm going to make the grid be 32 by 32. And then I'm going to grab this blue color, and I'm going to fill all 3 squares that aren't. I'm just going to leave this square empty. And that is because in a tile set, you always need the first tile of the tile set to be an empty square, because of the way that Gamemaker does tile sets. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tile set, and I'm going to call it TS call, and the sprite I'm going to set it up to be STS call. My tile width I'm going to set it to 32 by 32. And there, now I have a tile set. Next thing I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to delete a wall. I'm not going to need it. And then I'm going to go into my room. And I'm going to create a new layer. It's going to be a tile layer. And I'm going to name this, I'm going to name it Tile Collisions. And then for my tile set, I'm going to set it to TS call. And then I'm going to grab the tile and I'm just going to paint with it. As you can see, the room looks pretty much the same as it did before, but if I run this now, I'm not going to be able to collide with anything. Honestly, I'm not even able to run it because the O wall no longer exists. So, I'm going to go to my O player events, and I am going to go to my create event, and I'm going to go layer tile map get ID. Now what this does is we are going to feed it the name of a layer, and it is going to create a tile map of that layer. So the layer that we need to get the ID of is called Tile Collisions. And then I am going to create a variable called collision map, and it is going to equal the ID of this tile map layer. And then I'm going to copy this line. I'm going to go to the room start event. So other room start. I'm going to paste it. And that way, every single time that we move to a new room, like you go to another level, then you will be getting the tile map of that new level or that new room. So what I've done here is I've just gone and grabbed my tile collisions layer, and I've gotten the ID of that layer and stored it as a tile map inside of this variable. And then I'm going to go to my step event. And right in here where it says if place meeting wall, I'm going to change this to collision map. And it will actually run the exact same as my object collision. So if I run this now, I am now able to collide with tiles as if they were my wall objects. And one thing that's really handy about this is it will always work. So like I can go to my room and go to tile collisions. I can set it to be invisible. And if I run the game, I still collide with them. It looks weird because I can't see where I'm going or what I'm doing, but yeah. So let's say you have a project and you are not only running tile collisions, but you also have object collisions, because object collisions are really useful for moving platforms. You can't do a tile collision for a moving platform because you can't move the tile map. So you would also need object collisions for that. So what if I wanted to collide with the tile map and collide with the wall object? So I'm going to go to my objects, I'm going to go create object, and I'm going to remake wall. And then sprites swall. And then I'm going to go to my room, I'm going to delete that, I'm going to go to my collisions, and I'm going to create a platform using wall. So I have my tile collisions. I'm colliding just fine with those. However, I am not colliding with wall at all. So to fix this, I'm just going to go back to my player events, and right here in place meeting, I'm going to create an array. And I'm very simply just going to add wall to my collision array. And that's going to give me both collisions separately without having to run separate collision checks, because collision checks can be fairly taxing on performance. So you don't want to be running a million of them to see what all you're colliding with. So I'm just going to punch an array into my collision check, and that is going to give me both types of collisions simultaneously with one check. And now I'm still colliding with my tile map, but I'll also collide with wall. And that is a very basic introduction into tile collisions. And like I said, tile collisions are great. Like if I were to grab an actual tile set and paint a world, I could just have my, for a platformer, for example, I could just have my ground be on a separate layer as my, my background and my foreground tiles. And then I could just create a tile map of that and just collide directly with the ground rather than, placing different tiles on top of the ground or trying to place objects and line them up with the ground. I can just very simply collide with the tile map that I use for the ground. So it is very handy. And tile collisions used to be much more difficult. it used to be you'd have to be like, tile map get at pixel and run all these crazy functions to figure out whether or not you're actually colliding with a tile map. If you're curious as to how tile collisions used to work, you can go ahead and look at Sarah Spalding's tutorial on tile collisions, and you will see how they have evolved and they've become much more simpler now. Most of your collision check functions have been updated by Gamemaker to be able to accept tile maps. The only exceptions are like instance place, right? Where like you're checking if you're about to collide with an instance. You can't punch a tile map into that because it is not an instance. But like just for regular like place meeting, collision line, things like that, you can absolutely punch in tile maps and they will work just fine. So with that, that's all that I have to say about tile collisions and tile maps and how to get tile collisions going. If you have any questions about what I have done here, or you have any input, you can go ahead and comment that down below. If you have any tutorial suggestions, I'm always looking for new ideas for tutorials, so please comment those down below. Other than that, I just have like the usual like YouTuber jargon of just like please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Other than that, I hope you guys are having a good one. Peace out.